Fluke worms, they can grow to be about the size of your thumb, with about half the thickness of your thumb. Most people have fluke worms in their intestinal tract. Those fluke worms can have migrated into the liver and pancreas depending on solvents in the diet. So when somebody does carbonated beverages and things, carbonated beverages laced with solvents, that can really affect the immune system's ability to help keep things at bay. So when someone has parasites like the round worm, a roundworm can lay 200,000 eggs per day. 200,000. Now if we just consider this one parasite, all parasites have like a bit of a phenomenon, just like a tree does. If a tree drops its seed close to itself, it has a force which less than allows any tree to grow up underneath it whilst it's growing. So adult parasites have a similar sort of an energy. Adult parasites, they keep eco-sterilize and block any eggs from hatching around it that it's laid to give itself room enough, for its life itself. But when you do a parasite flush and you wipe the adult out, you haven't wiped the eggs out, you haven't wiped the larva out, and what happens? The eggs hatch into larva, and the larva crawls through the tissue, and it can be a lot more challenge if we let them do things right. If you start a parasite flush, you should do one on a rest active cycle until all false debris is gone, basically. Otherwise, it's wise to make sure you've got rid of your false debris, and then you go to work to clear away parasites and things. Could we see that?
Yeah.
Zach?
Yeah, I got that.
Did we get this on tape for today? Welcome to the Phoenix Physician Training. This is lesson number 24. It's all about analog sculpting, and that's sculpting the body to access state-specific behaviour, which we're going to be talking about today. But just before we begin, I just thought we would share just something very small about parasites. There's so much that we could cover in this training, but I really would love for all of us as Phoenix physicians to be aware of the importance of clearing away parasites and doing this sequentially by turning the tap on at the top of the intestinal tract, getting the river flowing, pulling all the false debris out of the intestinal tract, and then going to work to clear away all the parasites. And we were just saying that the adults can have hatched, released eggs, and those eggs are blocked from hatching whilst the adult's there. You do a parasite flush, wipe the adult out, the eggs hatch into larva, and the larva crawls through the tissue and becomes adults. That's a very common sort of a thing. Granulations and cystic types of conditions and cell wall rapid repair can have got stuck wherever the mold and fungus and yeast got a hole in connective tissue. The mold and fungus and yeast and the parasitic life forms produce a substance called choreogonotropic hormone, which is like an estrogenic compound, which is a endothelial cell wall growth factor. So in the presence of this substance, cell walls can have grown around that material to wall it off, and basically many cancers actually arise as a result of this kind of an etiology. So this worm up here has teeth which hooks onto the intestinal tract and just hangs in there just like a leech. This one also has teeth. This is a pinworm, so it has teeth and it just hooks on and just sort of like a streamer hangs onto your intestinal tract and just is there, forever, just living off him and stuff. These beef worms, beef tapeworms and things, they can grow really huge, and they like to coil themselves up at night and tuck themselves up under the liver, and then they slowly release themselves where there's food into the intestinal tract, and they eat whatever there is there, and they excrete into your body the most noxious substances. But they can cause bloating and gas. They can always cause gas and flatulence because they do produce noxious gases themselves. They can always create a state of anemia. They can cause vasoconstriction of the blood vessels and things at the periphery of ourselves and this sort of a thing. They can cause fatigue. They can cause joint, rheumatic kinds of conditions and things that can have also happened. Is there a seat for us there over there? Is that good, sir? Is there a spare cushion anywhere there? Okay. Huh?
Here's a spare cushion.
Oh, spare cushion. Thanks, sweetie.
Oh, thanks.
That's from a good friend Muir. She's given up that. She's going to sit on a hard seat herself, but she has a small seat to give her some height.
Where did these come from?
These basically were defecated out of people.
No,
I want to
where did we get it?
beef tapeworms. Those beef tapeworms can have come from eggs that came from pets that defecated these eggs out, and they were on their fur and blowing around in the air. They can certainly come from consuming flesh products and stuff, undercooked sorts of flesh products and things that can have come about. And then mostly they can sort of come more from a little bit of a contamination. But how did they arise in the body? They only kind of arisen as a result of the acidicness of the stomach less than being excellent. That's the first line of defense, is actually the acid of the stomach. Whilst you have good acid of the stomach, no problem at all. You can roll around in that stuff and it's just not going to even matter. Nothing actually.
Half the country's taking antacids.
Right. You could actually down several vials of typhoid, you know, and absolutely use it for nutrition. Yeah. Not anything at all. Right.
Then how do we know our acid of the stomach acid is good?
How do we know the acid of our stomach is good? What is one thing our physician might do to check the upper stomach to see the acidity or overactivity or underactivity of the
You can look the color of the
around
colour
of your eyes, yes. Yeah. Yes. What would we notice, David?
I think if there's a lighter corona around the iris, it shows up the overacidity of the stomach.
Okay, the pupil itself, right? Around the very pupil, not the iris. But
sorry, yeah, pupil.
Okay, good. Okay, and then the underactivity would be? Because the tissue around the pupil itself is darker. Okay, so that's a way to tell. We could learn how to muscle test. Maybe it's possible we could spend a little time, we can teach you how to do a bit more muscle testing to be able to tell. But you can be very intuitive also. You can sense these things if you open yourself up to this. Okay, so basically we just started out by just simply saying a few things about parasites. We said that a true parasite flush really involves clearing away false debris and doing it methodically like this. And then Dr. Narvaez reminded us at the very beginning of this that parasite flush is done in another way where downstream cleaning would have occurred can be very detrimental. And the reasons why is because organisms can pleomorphically change, become more virulent, and that adults are wiped out and the eggs and larvae all hatch and grow even more so. Yes, and so for these reasons it's worth one's while doing this in a sequential and a progressive sort of way. So today's lesson is all about analog sculpting, and that's sculpting the body to access state-specific behaviour. So let's just start out. Analog sculpting. What is this? What is the meaning of this? Analog. Analog is everything other than dialogue. So that's everything else, isn't it? Our analog, which is the analogical part of our communication, accounts for about 93 or 4% of what's being communicated. The words that are chosen is something, but actually how things are expressed This is analog. And what today's lesson is all about analog sculpting. Sculpting the body to access state-specific behaviour. And today's lesson, lesson number 24, is all about how our physicians can apply the use of this technology of analog sculpting to achieve greater success with the people that come to you. So there's much that could be said about this, but I'd love to make sure that we can limit our conversation and our lesson today to be the very things that are vital for you when you connect with your client or you connect with people. So analog sculpting. Let's just give a small example right now so we can be very clear what analog sculpting is and the power of analog sculpting. A cognitive, rational therapist could talk about pride until that therapist or counsellor was black and blue in the face, and they never would achieve pride. No matter how much you talked about this, whilst the shoulders were hunched forward and the person was hunched over their heart, no matter how much one would talk about pride, only one can feel pride when the shoulders are back and the heart is out. So this is called analog sculpting. What we're talking about here now is creating the attitude, having an attitudinal reflexive component, a realization that's to do with sculpting the body to access state-specific behaviour. It is very interesting that whenever the head would have been in alignment with the body and the heart is leading slightly, a person is more associated in life. Wherever their head would have come much more outside the body plane like this, and I'm going to sort of show you sort of more like this, the more the head would have moved like this, the more hallucination is possible for people who would love to be hallucinating. But there is a great amount of hallucination the more the body has entered into shape more of a question mark. Analog sculpting is sculpting all of the behaviour other than the dialogue, but being very astute on this level. So we want to keep our focus on this level here today. So we've talked about rapport, and unless it's possible for you to have a little bit of body posture similar to your client, a little bit of energetics that's similar, a person will feel much more congruent with you as you have rapport and you have a little bit of this sense of things. I always get down as much as possible, except seemingly tonight. Everybody's a bit lower than me except for David. But I always do what I can to get a little bit lower than whoever I'm talking with. And I'll find a way to get down just a little bit so I'm level eye to eye and maybe just a bit lower actually. And there's a great reason why you might consider also the value of this with your clients and people who come to you, that you give them good advice. You want them to be open to you, right? You want them to be open to take this information in. So we want to be more on this person's level, and we want them to feel in charge, you know. And so you'll do this by having them, by getting just a little bit lower than what they are. You can imagine if someone was tall and someone was short, that would be very important that we would do what we can to get to our level sort of eye to eye, and so we adjust things a little bit in this way, because then you have the greatest rapport. If someone is looking up, they always will be reminded a little bit more of sort of being a childlike themselves a bit, and they'll cause others to feel a bit more judgmental about things. And then people looking down their nose, that's going to cause them to be judgmental, and the person feeling like they're sort of on the receiving end. It creates a child-parent sort of transaction a little bit, whereas adult to adult is a little bit more eye to eye. So, and when you have rapport, I always sit with my people that we're going in the same direction. So when we sit down together with each other, I have something out in front a little bit, you know, and the two of us, you and I, we're going to talk about this, you know, together. And I've shouldered up to you. It's like, hey, you know, this is my sibling, or this is like someone that's just shouldered up to me. We're going to do this together. That's such a wonderful thing. Opposite genders often can love to sit opposite each other, and that's sort of kind of a very nice thing. However, as you do your work, it is very wonderful that you can get a good feeling from the persons that you work with, and you can actually kind of face a little bit in the same way, and you can shoulder up. You'll notice that you may have a lot more success, and you bypass conscious objection. More so. It's like you got on a swing, you know, and you're swinging together, we're going together, you know, and we're in rapport with each other when you do that, you see. It's like you got in the car and you're driving somewhere, we're going somewhere together, and then you will talk about something sort of like. So, you know, see, this is called analog sculpting. Sculpting the analog to access state-specific behaviour. So now this is way more powerful kind of change work than cognitively going over things, and there you have the possibility of conscious objection. When somebody can do their change work more by sculpting the analog, we can bypass very nicely conscious objection. So one way one could do this, just to give you an example, you sculpt the space to create a state-specific energy. Now I might just leave a book on the table and it has a title. This is called analog sculpting. No one needs to have to say anything, you just simply left the book on the table, someone walked past, they saw the title, and that was enough for them. This is called analog sculpting. How you adjust yourself around your client is called analog sculpting. And we want to sculpt the analog in a manner that creates an integration and congruence so that you really have a nice thoroughfare with the people you're with. So now, if you need to make sure you have someone's favour, you want to say something and people will hear this favourably, then whisper this more in the right ear. Because the left hemisphere always generally hears things much more favourably, and the right hemisphere is more likely to question things a little bit and possibly run into some aversion and some conscious objection. So there's a very reason why you would want to position yourself more on the right side of the person and put your client on your left. Now you could be in any position, and I'm just describing the major highways to get to a particular state. But you could be in any position. However, that makes sense that you might consider what I'm saying as far as where you position yourself in relationship to your client. If you position yourself on your client's right, you'll always be drawing the person more into their motor sequencing kind of behaviour, which is engaging more the left hemisphere. You'll be engaging your client's perspective more of connected more with outside and external loop, by virtue of engaging the left hemisphere more by sitting on the person's right and the right ear hearing more the material. One day I was at a gathering of the Rainbow family, and I was asked to come to address the Centre for Alternative Living Medicine there, and they had TPs and everything that was set up and everything. It was a big gathering. There were maybe 10,000 people came or something. And the Centre for Alternative Living Medicine is a group of people, and they really care for everyone in the group, and they help manage anything that sort of comes up. Most of the kinds of things that come up are sort of scrapes and burns and food poisoning and drug overdose. So I had been there for about a day or so, and it was really late at night, maybe about 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning or something, you know. And I was living in this little teepee in this council lodge, and I heard someone say, "Oh yes, happy face," because they all know me as Happy Face. I have no idea my name's Dr. Jubb. They said, "Happy face," you know. And I said, "Well, what?" You know, and they said, "Oh my God, well, we're all at wit's end," they said, "and we've been up just for several hours ourselves here, and oh my God, we have somebody, and this person's having an abreaction, you know." Does everyone know what an abreaction is? An abreaction is an unpleasant trip. So a person's sort of having a bit of an unpleasant trip. And they said, oh, we've been working with this person for some time now and we're just exhausted. And they said, we're just about to call the hospital and the ambulance to come up the mountain to get this person because we're just like completely exhausted, we don't know what to do. I said, oh. And I said, where is this person? By this time I come to the door of the TP and they said, just over here. And I looked and I could see there was a lot of fuss and people were sort of all milled around and there was someone laying down on the ground and someone had hold of her hand tightly like this and they were all sort of doing all sorts of things or what have you. I was like, anyway, I said, oh my God. I said, all right. Anyway, so I quickly got dressed and came over, And the very first thing I did was I saw that here's this person having a major overreaction and not sort of focused and not having any idea where they were at all, sort of, and her friend had a hold of it in a tight grip of her left hand and was gripping her like this, like really gripping her. And the very first thing I said, oh my God, I said, you are the most powerful resource state now. And all of a sudden this person, like no one had communicated like this, And I said, that's so wonderful that you have some good support here around you, And I said, and your friend has that connection with you here on the left, is now going to hold your left hand and you're going to hold your good friend's hands now with your right hands and feel on this side. And I just quickly swapped them over, right? And swapped everybody over. And I got, and the lamps were all around, and I sort of brought a couple of the lamps and put them down to the bottom right-hand quadrant down here. So the first things I did was quickly said something, oh my God, you're in the most amazing resource state, And then I said, and I added these few other things on that changed the analog around, and now what's happened? The light is down here, we have someone on this side, anchoring more on this side, and it's causing a person to be more in left hemisphere, which connects us with the outside world more. If you want to be more outside, then you'll feel more the right side of your body. You want to be going further into some state, you can feel more the left side of your body, and that will cause you to travel more in because of the way that our brain is connected preferentially to its linkage to aspects of the body. I put the light down here because it's going to draw this person more into their feelings and their ability to kinesthetic motor sequence things. So now, her friend had accessed more her internal dialogue state, and she was having a lot of internal dialogue, and what the internal dialogue was wasn't really very good. It was less than excellent. And I said, that's all right that you can relax and that this will pass in a little while, I told her, and that there's some major resource that you'll have as a result when you come back. And you won't be able to remember anything, I said to her. It'll all be forgotten completely. However, I said, a very powerful resource will be accessed from this moment onward throughout the rest of your life, I said to her. And I said, and this will be and is about being joined with this voice beyond yourself and being aware that you are beyond this body. And that I instructed that in a little while she would come to more, and that it was perfectly allowable, the circumstance of the things that has taken place and everything. And little by little, this person just completely started to come out at the moment that left hand was let go and the right hand was, and then the light was brought over here. Now, other things that I did, this is called analog sculpting. Other things I did was, I noticed that most everybody around this person, they were talking really quick, they were not thinking in terms of her listening, and they were saying things that was like, you know, if this person is dreaming, it's like, please, I mean, make sure the words that are being spoken are perfect for the dream, you know, because it's like, it was god awful, you know. And so other things that we changed was the analog, because I changed the dialogue immediately, but we changed the analog. We changed the analog so that I brought my voice and brought everyone else's voices a little lower and created a bit more space between the thoughts. Now, what was happening before that was voice was very high and quick, and a high, quick voice causes people to be more.
Nervous.
Yes. And what sense?
Panicky.
What sense is more?
Oh,
Yes, that's right, up there.
yeah.
What is it?
Visual.
Visual. Cause people to be more up there. Cause people to be more visual. A high, quick, fast voice is going to have caused people to be more visual. If you want people to remain connected in their body, that's so very important that you use a voice tone which is more kinesthetic, it's deeper, and there's a little more space between the words, and then you're going to be accessing more kinesthetic state. So that's something else that I did, was change the analog from an analog which was causing this person to be more sort of like in visual mode, and cause this person to be more in their feelings and in hearing, which is more a deeper, slower pace, more medium paced, a little bit more calm and everything. So we use our voice to calm things. One day I was on the airplane and all of a sudden the pilot asked if there was any doctor, if there was a doctor on the plane, could they please come up to the front, you know. And I just sort of sat there and I thought, oh well, you know, they won't want me, you know. I just sort of sat there. But nobody showed me up or anything, you know. And then they said, was there a doctor on board, please, to come up front, you know. And I thought, I looked around and nobody budged there. I said, oh well. So I went, you know, down to the front. And here I see this older gentleman, you know, and he's having a bit of a challenge with his heart. Now, I can see the stewards are panicked, and they are just like major freaking out. They are freaking out, you know. And they're causing this fella to freak out. I can tell you, I can see it, you know. But there's no telling them this, you know. But I looked at him, and I could see that he was more nervous that he created this whole commotion sort of thing. And I thought, most first thing, immediately, I just said to him, I took a look at him and I felt his pulse and everything, and I could see, oh, his heart's not too bad actually, it's all right. I mean, he's going to be okay, you know. And I said, things are going to be okay here, you know, like this. And he sort of looked up at me, you know, and then he could feel the energy of the stewards and everything. And just when they were not looking, I just went like that to him, you know. Because I had a report. Now I communicated something to him just with that wink, you know, that hey, you and I, we know something that's going on here, and it's okay, you know. Because what, you know, so through your analog, you can create the most amazing, powerful work, you know, and you can have instantaneous rapport with people, and you should be very excellent on this level. Many times I've used little techniques like this, totally because it's on this level and have a great astuteness. And then often the great work that you do is to cause people to be relaxed and to be calm and that everything is okay. And great work happens just on this level alone. So we do this very much through our analog sculpting, how we respond to others through the use of our body. We said that we sculpt our body to access state-specific behaviour. We can sculpt the room and sculpt things around to access state-specific behaviour. Fool's Crow was one of my very first medicine teachers. And Fool's Crow would have his apprentices that went out to do a vision quest and he did some work with them, and he could predict what kinds of dreams the person would have. Certainly some of the dreams they would have he would predict, because he did things through the analogue of setting things up that would come to be in the days this person was in this meditation, through analogue sculpting. All of the medicine people of the Native Americas would create change, and all of them were skilled and versed in being able to shape things for effect. They would change the beat, they would bring colour in, they would costume, they would actually cause people to be gathered in a specific sort of a way. They would create sounds for the various effects they had on the body, and they would act things out and make puppets, and they would make things crafting-wise to represent certain things, you see. And this is all called analogue sculpting. They would create a medicine wheel, and they would say, did you know that if you would love to be reminded of some great teachings in this medicine wheel, whenever you're reminded of North, you can always have a feeling inside of being orientated around wisdom. Wisdom is control of one's appetite, and this is what the natives taught. Wisdom all relates to a control of our appetite for all of the sensory sorts of things. So when they would face North, they just would be reminded of this in the medicine wheel, that of North they were reminded of wisdom and what this related to in their day, in their moment. This is called analogue sculpting. They would place a colour that would represent the various directions of the medicine wheel. The east was symbol yellow, they always used yellow, and in this family that I've schooled in, which is ancient and Toltec, that comes from my teacher who's Creek. In our family, yellow is always symbolic of the east and new beginnings. Green on the medicine wheel is always symbolic of the south, because when they looked south they saw great greenness and growth, and south represents other things. The west always was a blue. When they saw people would sort of less than remain on the earth, they felt blue was the colour of this, and it's all about transformation. And the north was white, and then black was for the moon, brown was for the earth, and red was for the sun. So they used colours in this way, and then when they used the colour, it was a reminder of some state. So we said right at the very beginning that when somebody was a cognitive, rational therapist involved in some process, and then the client can have been hunched over their heart, and they can have talked about pride until they were black and blue in the face, but it would literally be until the shoulders were back and the heart was out that the person actually would have the experience of pride. So it's very interesting that studies show that one can access an energy and motion through adopting the posture and the facial expression and this sort of thing of this state. Studies show that as one has this inner smile throughout everything, though anything is discernible necessarily on the outside, one can do everything with a slight inner smile, and it will change everything more to be cool. So there is a place in hell that is reserved for members of this family. There's a place in hell that is reserved for members of this family. And this place is reserved for those people who can keep their cool.
In hell.
So, and it literally does mean this, because as the brain is cool, the water of ourself is more in a crystalline lattice, and when a person is hot, it loses its crystalline lattice. Also, when people smile, it causes more blood flow to travel to the very center of the brain more, and that causes it to be more cool. When a person is more doing the opposite and having frowned, that causes the blood to heat. And it is interesting that someone says, "Oh my God, she is so cool-headed," or "Oh my God, she is such a hothead," you know, or "He is such a hothead." Literally, this is a literal expression of physiology. So we change the analog, we change our body position, and we access state-specific behavior more as a result of this. You want someone to be able to have a visual memory of something that's being spoken. Then as you're looking toward me, then I would want to place things more up in your visual field up here. If I'm working with you and I want to make sure that you are learning English by visually imprinting the word in your brain and then spelling from the visual imprint, which English is a very visual language, you have to see the letter P and H in the word phonetic to know how it's spelled. If you're spelling it phonetic, you'd miss the P and the H. English is a very visual language, whereas Russian and Spanish and many of these other great noble languages are more phonetic, and they're more easily able to be learned, and are less visual and more auditory and kinesthetic. Whereas English is a very visual language, and one has to actually visualize the words to be able to know how to spell them. So if I was engaging your visual memory as you're looking at me, I'd make cue cards and I'd bring them up to this quadrant here, because that's going to go more to your right hemisphere. This is called analog sculpting. Sculpting all of the behavior other than the dialogue is called analog sculpting. Analog sculpting is getting down to the same level as a person that you're with. Analog sculpting is shouldering more up to a person that you're with. Analog sculpting would be me reminding you of some outcome that we have as a group, and let's say this is all to do with analog sculpting, you know. And so now what I do is I say, you know, this which I'm holding up is about analog sculpting, you know, and this is the outcome that we have as a group. Now I can have a precision model for our meeting and getting things done fast by not having to challenge any irrelevancy. So now when people have meetings, there can often be a lot of stuff that's perfectly irrelevant. And how do you do this in a way that you completely bypass conscious objection to your having raised an issue of relevance? You can always point to your outcome. And by just pointing to the outcome, you again remind everybody, oh, that's right, we're talking about analog sculpting here. So this is called analog sculpting. You literally are learning more the usefulness of how you sculpt your body, how you place things in your home for various effect in changing the mood and changing the energy and motion. The idea of noticing something small, you know, and sort of picking just that tiny little bit of lint off the coat is a reminder to someone that you're working with of your sensitivity and your caring about things on this level. Very important. More important than what you say. Much more important. It's much more important, I want you to know this. Because what you said could have been just gobbledygook. But if you're in rapport with the person, they will get this, and anything they didn't get, they will get, my God, because they're there for themselves, and they're there for you. It's like, that's the way it is, and that's the way that you want it to be. You never want to be in a position where all of a sudden you realise, oh, wait a minute, I mean, I'm going to convince you. It's like, you want me to convince you? It's like, oh my God, I'm going to do all this work and you don't have to do anything. It's like, excuse me. You know? Don't be in any position where somebody's going to have you convincing them. No, wait a minute. They would want to be in a mode that they would want to be convinced themselves, and then possibly that you could assist. But the idea that you would be there convincing them is like, whoa, wait a minute. You know, you're on a boat and your boat is perfectly going to remain afloat. But the other person you're giving advice to, they're on a sinking boat incredibly. And only someone that can give them advice is on a boat that's fairly firm. Someone who is trying to give advice and they're also on the boat that's sinking is not going to help, I tell you. So make sure you have rapport with your person. Make sure you get down to the same level relatively that this person is. Make sure you soften your voice and you hear how this person languages things. Somebody like a male can have a very boisterous kind of voice and be booming and speaking way past everybody. It's like, God help us, like, wait a minute. You know, and they kind of learned that. But now if you spoke like a mouse, that's not going to work with this person. You have to match a little bit. And then it's possible to lead the person to a more excellent, perhaps, way of communicating, which is a bit softer in communicating just to the person who's listening. You know, and the person becomes more aware. You know, have you ever been in the car and somebody's driving and then somebody's just booming everything they're saying? It's like, we should speak just to the person that you're communicating with, just as they hear this clearly, and not past the person, because then the person wants us to go back somewhere else to hear this comfortably, sort of thing, you know. So analog sculpting is very important, but you pace the analog of the other person to have rapport, and you pace the dialogue also, the verbal and non-verbal components of the other person's behaviour. You pace. You pace this by mirror-like pacing, which is an opposite sort of pacing. So when the cat moves its tail like this, one could move their hand like this. You know, eventually there's a rapport happening and an entrainment, and then you can move and you'll notice that moves the cat's tail. Pets are very useful to be able to discover this aspect of ourselves, to have rapport. But I can make a horse roll over perfectly. And I can make a horse lie down also by having rapport with the horse and pacing the horse. Or I can cause an animal, any animal, to go to sleep perfectly. You know. So we do this through analog sculpting. And so how you show up. Did you wear a little something small that caused people to be more in the moment? Like, huh? This is called analog sculpting. When someone wore a hat, everybody noticed. You know, they noticed. That caused people to be more in the moment. This is called analog sculpting. One day someone came up to me and they said, oh, you know, in the training, and they said, God, I really like so-and-so. And I said, oh, really? And they said, yeah. And I said, but I'm a bit shy and I sort of have no idea sort of what to do, you know. And I said, oh. I said, well, would you love something actually so that it's possible this person really feels in rapport with you, and then you'll have the opportunity to connect and you see, you know, how things will go. I said, oh, yeah, absolutely. And I said, well, tomorrow, find out, just by casually talking, what sort of clothing, more or less, you know, does this person sort of like, you know, and just make it real casual, 2, 3, 4 levels away, sort of. But you're going to find out what this person really likes, and then you're going to adjust yourself to this the next day. I said, oh, okay. I thought that was really interesting. So they went and they connected with this person. They found this person loves flannel shirts. They're just like, they love flannel shirts. You know, it could be very funny or very interesting and strange. But this person loves flannel shirts. And so this person was for sure wearing a flannel shirt the next day. And lo and behold, my God, you know, it's like, I don't know why, but there's something magnetic, and I just feel like we're cut from the same cloth or something. So this is called analog sculpting. All of our Phoenix physicians should be very skillful on this level of sculpting and creating the change that you want through your analog. So now, a very famous hypnotist called Milton Erickson, was one day at this party, and Milton Erickson, towards the end of his life, became fairly famous. You know, he's probably one of the most skillful hypnotists, you know, in the country. and great wisdom, unbelievable wisdom, like great change agent, you know. But anyway, sort of towards the end of Ericsson's life, he became fairly well known and was invited to sort of various sorts of circles and this sort of thing. And one day found himself in a receiving line for this very famous person who was receiving people at the end of the party and thanking them all for coming and that sort of thing, you know. And so everybody was sort of just going past this receiving line, and Ericsson was in the line, was just about ready for his turn to be received by this fairly famous person. And he turned to the person, the couple of people beside him, and sort of nudged them and said, "What's this?" He said, "Listen to this." He said, you know, and it was just about time, and then he said, "Oh, thank you very much. It was just the most amazing crocodile, and it was a really, really wonderful alligator. Thank you very much." You know, and he said, "Oh, yes, it was very nice fun." Like this and sort of like this. And then the couple that heard this, they were just like laughing hysterically, you know. Now, Ericsson did this in a way that was with perfect rapport, just like everybody else, but he just changed the words around a little bit. So you know, the person didn't skip a beat. I mean, "Oh, yes, because it was much more with the analogue of everything than there was with anything else. Someone could come into the room, you know, and then they're going, you know, like this sort of thing, you know, and without you knowing anything, if you just do a small amount of that, you're going to have rapport with this person. This is called analog sculpting, and you pace so that you'll be able to have opportunity. If you do not pace, then you will not have opportunity. What is this? Opportunity is everything. If you do not have opportunity, you do not have anything. And as a result of having rapport with those people that you connect with, then we have opportunity. Otherwise, we don't really have opportunity. Very powerful what I'm sharing with you. You can have your change work and be helpful and assist whilst you have rapport. Now, only whilst you have rapport. Very powerful and very important. We only can honestly create the change that we would love by having rapport, and we do this primarily through being very skillful at analog sculpting. Sculpting state-specific behaviour for getting some behavioural change. So we brought our voice down perhaps, that's called analog sculpting. We paced where the other person's voice was for a little while, and then we brought our voice down, and we noticed that the person followed. We noticed that when two people sort of at the tea, you know, having a little cup of tea or something, a chai or something, and then one person leans in, and the other person leans in, the other person leans back, the other person leans back. And we do this sort of thing other than consciously, but it's your want to know that you have rapport, then you pace, and then you lead. And you notice if there's a following. If there's a following in, you know you have rapport. And so rapport happens best as this is happening below consciousness. So the person doesn't become aware that you're doing that, you know. Like as soon as the cat becomes aware, but the cat really doesn't become aware actually. You could actually do that. It's like the cat will feel, "My God, I sort of really feel like you know, connected incredibly." So analog sculpting. We talked about having an inner smile. So no matter what's going on, you have this sort of inner smile, and it causes everything to be directed in the experience to be more supportive and more pleasant and more positive and more associated and more congruent. And these are all the things that we really care about. So analog sculpting is very important.
Excuse me. You say that when you smile, you're doing obviously the opposite of frowning, and when you frown, you're creating heat, which melts the lattice, and when you smile, you're being cool, which increases the lattice. But
yes, of the blood.
It seems kind of opposite, because you would expect when you experience pleasure, you get warm and you get blood flow.
No, yes you do. That causes a cooling. And blood constricts and causes heat, that's right.
Blood constricts
Yes.
and causes heat?
Yes. Causes congestion and heat.
Oh.
And blood flow causes cooling. That's right. Yeah.
As far as there's the energetic component, constrictions being like unhelpful of energy.
Yeah, and then it builds heat. We can teach you a meditation where you could melt ice, all day. You could melt a big hole in the ice where you sat, actually, We could dry sheets. We could teach a meditation perfectly to dry sheets, off the body heat. You dry several sheets that were dipped and laid over you over some 5 hours. All the sheets would be dry. Okay. So analog sculpting is sculpting the body to access state-specific behaviour. If you'll sit more on the person's right, you're drawing them into more of their kinesthetic feelings. You adjust your voice tone a little bit to match the person. You slowly bring your voice down a little bit. A softer voice, and it is more comfortable voice. A voice tone which is about the tonal range and tonal band of your own reading tone. So when as I can fit things more into a tonal range, that's your reading tone, how you read information, auditory information, the person's open to receive this. Mostly when they read their own, and they use their own internal dialogue, their own dialogue, and that's mostly when people are open. So you can use that tonal band as a state-specific behaviour to access more open neurology for hearing things that's said. Is this making sense? Okay. So, if someone said something with rapport, they could just about say anything. Most people will agree. They'll say, "Come on over, yeah, sure, it's no problem." Where if you said to someone in a smiling, joking way, "Hey, I'm going to come over, I'm going to break all your windows," everybody says, "Yeah, sure, come on over." What? What? Because most of us are with the analog, you see. We're much more with the analog, and so it's the analog is the true communication, actually. The dialogue is sort of a small component of this. So that's very important to make sure that you're aware that the analogical component of our dialogue and our communication is much more insightful and powerful. How would it be if you said to somebody that you were giving them instructions and you said, and this is something that I would really feel like, I would do if I were you. It's like person's giving advice, but they're dissociated whilst they're giving advice. There's some reason why that could be so, but or somebody saying you're sitting with someone and we're unaware of analog sculpting, and that you're saying, and now I know that you are going to be successful with this. Just I know that you are going to be successful. or I know shit's not going to happen. So this is called a sequential incongruency. Something sequentially is incongruent in what's being expressed. Be astute on your level of analog sculpting. Make sure that one's body language is in alignment with the things that you're saying. If somebody was speaking, right, and then you noticed that the persons that you were communicating with, they were like this.
That's internal dialogue, right?
Yes, it's a holding back something that is said, you see. If you're communicating with someone and you see their left hand and left foot fidgeting like that, what's going on in the brain? Internal dialogue, excellent. That person only can have so much available on this level because of this internal dialogue that can have been there. When somebody goes, what's that an analog sculpt for?
Outcome. Outcome.
Possibly, yes. What sense?
Vision.
Vision. Visual, memory, visual constructing things put together up here, things you've seen before, you know, in your memory, auditory memory, auditory construct, you know. So we can access these states. By bringing things to be. So then I might say, and you know, I can see that this usefulness of the realization of analog sculpting, you know, and I can build this as a resource here visually, and I can say, and the way that things have been, you know, where somebody was hardly aware of this, you know, it's possible now, you know, really, for things to be more integrated. So this is a use of analog. So on the stage, I might put information in a specific quadrant and then refer to it by coming back to this quadrant, and putting specific information in another quadrant and coming back to this quadrant, and eventually causing integration, you see, with these two pieces of information. This is called analog sculpting. It's sculpting the body to access state-specific behaviour. So when I went through my shamanic training, our teacher showed us all sorts of positions and things that we could access with our body to access state-specific behaviour. We were taught how to intensify some state or how to diminish some state, and we were taught how to get into various positions where we could create a specific state. How did we fall asleep? We all learned how we fell asleep. We all learned how we woke up through the use of the body. So this is called analog sculpting. We have some of the finest teachings of its kind on the earth in this area. We have some 40 days of training that's all about this, which is very amazing. We've thought of making sure that we have a component in this training as physicians and as medical intuits, that you can intuit various things that's going on as a result of the person's analog, and that you'll be very astute on this level of their analog. If you've ever been up into an attic in a house, have you ever smelt the air up there? It generally might less than be very fresh. How someone sits, how much of a passage there is for air to pass and all of this to pass and things. This is like the attic. That body posture, putting the shoulders back and the heart out, accesses a state more of being associated in life. When someone always was leaning on things and leaning and this is more dissociated sorts of states. There's a value for dissociation and a value for associating. When you want someone to have a greater objectivity, then there could be a small dissociation, a body posture of dissociation, which is a leaning away more, and then as somebody becomes more associated, it's like, what? And then the body posture becomes more into the circumstance. So all of these skills are meant to cause us to be more timeless and be more in the timeless present. Neither present nor past nor future, just simply timeless. Being more timeless. Bringing the hands together, of course, creates integration between the right and left hemispheres. That's what this is, like an integration, you know. Your analog sculpting, this as I would do this, like, is symbolic that I have mirror-like wisdom. I'm cupping my left receptive hand in front of me here, like I am receptive to you, and my hand with the palm, with the thumb coming into the center of the palm like this, coming down like this, is that I have a mirror-likeness of my ability to show you the way of where you are. And so this whole posture is like a mirror-like wisdom. This, somebody would just simply go, this is, you know, let me show you the way of the heart. Let me come from, as I'm coming from my heart, let me show you the way. That's what this is, you know. So, you know, everything, you know, means something, you know. Yeah. So everything means something. How we use our body to access state-specific behaviour is very important. Your ability to notice and observe and start to become more astute on this level and help people have a healing by your constant attention more to the analogue of things. So I like when we have a meeting with people that those people who are present are aware that it's interesting what they say to the others listening. Because many times somebody could be interested and then they notice them talking, but others maybe just going, you know, what's this to do with them? This is called analog sculpting, that we would observe and notice how it is for everyone that's present, and that things are done in such a way that people feel joined and connected, and this is spiritual. So analog sculpting causes us to have greater rapport with people, and the rapport is like money in the bank for opportunities to appear. We have to invest in establishing good rapport, and this always serves you very well. And that's the most important thing. Your analog sculpting really is to access resourcefulness more and whole brain functioning more in the persons that you're with, and the realization that it is through their body posture that they access these states, and that if somebody always was hunched over their heart, they might less than really be able to feel pride. Someone could only have cried on the left shoulder but not on the right shoulder. They always might have sought the left shoulder to cry, but they can't cry on the right shoulder. Someone can weep and weep and weep uncontrollably when they're looking down here like this and they're looking up like that. It can cause a person to weep uncontrollably. But if you ask the person, would it be all right to have your eyes level and your heart out, the person might not be able to cry in that state. All memory, learning and behaviour is state specific. There's a physiology that's involved in accessing this state. So when somebody would have scraped their nails on the chalkboard, and so everybody would have felt sort of a little like this, you know, this is state specific. When someone sees even the gorillas yawning, it is amazing that even human beings start to yawn after they've seen the gorillas yawning. And then also when we talk about yawning, it creates more yawning, you see. So everything is state specific. It's very interesting that one day, you know, this person was in a very nice, light, hypnotized state, you know, and I told him, my God, this is such a beautiful resource that this can be applied anywhere, you know. And I said, because it was an instruction for people that were observing of how important words are and how powerful words are in affecting things without anything necessarily being said to affect things. Things are affected as a result of what is said. So I said to this person, imagine now for a moment that you're beautifully sitting and you're in this perfectly relaxed state. And now you hold both your arms out. And you hold both your arms out, and now what I ask you to do is to imagine now for a moment that one arm is getting lighter and lighter, and there's a healing balloon that's tugging on this, and it's getting lighter and lighter. And that the other arm now has a purse on it, and this purse is quite heavy, and it's actually getting heavier and heavier. And so this person will notice that I asked them to hold their arms out, but now what's happened is this, it's got more and more and more like this, right? Until I say, okay, now open your eyes. The person opens their eyes. I said, now, did I ask you to raise one arm and lower the other? The person says, no. You know, but these words that I spoke created this physiology, and then some of us might have even felt, as I spoke the words, a feeling of the arms wanting to come out actually, you know. And so the analog in your ability to be able to pace people is very important to be able to access state-specific behaviour. Let's just give you one more example so that you're aware of the great importance of analog sculpting. I know that in the 59 minutes that we've been with each other, we just have a few minutes left, I want to make sure that you've got the idea of analog sculpting and how very important this is. And this is just like analog sculpting 101, but you need to learn 102, 103, 104, and then 202, 203, 204, you know, and get to the place of having great skill on this level. Let's just imagine just for a moment now that someone's come to you and they have a belief about something, you know, and it's a limiting belief, you know. Let's say the person has a belief about something, you know, we have 5 minutes. And let's just imagine for a moment that this is the belief the person has, and the belief is, oh, I don't know whether I can heal, and it's a belief. The person literally has a belief and they wonder whether they can heal. And actually they could have framed it really negatively, actually, that they're going to something or whatever, no. And this is a belief, and that is limited the person from being able to have a good effect. So now, you as a physician can undo this without really saying anything about this through analog sculpting. So how am I going to do this? So I'll be in conversation with you, and 2, 3, 4 levels away, I'll be doing several things, which is out of your consciousness. But I might talk about something and elicit, for instance, a memory in the past of you having had a belief about something, you know. And I might bring something up that's universal about some experience that we've had that might have been a belief. Could have been about the Easter Bunny, you know. It could have been about Father Christmas, you know. Or could have been about elves, or you know, something that the person might have had a belief about at one point, you know. I said, can you remember a moment in the past where you had a belief about something, you know, and that turned to doubt? You know, the person says, what do you think? Yeah, and as the person's going, yeah, I'm doing something with my analog. What did I do with my analog? I said, is there something that you had a belief about that's now turned to doubt? Say it again.
You lifted your eyebrows.
Okay. So I said, can you remember something in the past where you had a belief about something and now it has turned to doubt? And the person says, oh, let me think about that. And as they're catching that, you see, you go, you know, it's just peaking, because you want to anchor, and you want to be able to do something with your analog that's just going to access this state. And you want to just do that out of consciousness, something very simple that you've chosen to be able to access and anchor this state. It's called getting an anchor for a state. And you want to anchor the state as it's peaking, just before it peaks, you know. The person says, well, yeah, you know, and you raise your eyebrows. No, you say, so you remember something, you know, in the past which you did have a belief about. You can raise your eyebrows again like this. You know. This is, yeah. And you mean to say you had a belief and now that's turned to doubt. You know, this is, yeah. You have no idea, right? But something has really occurred powerfully, right? Because all you need to do is to go, you know that you know, thought that you've had about your ability, you know, to be able to heal, you know, and you're wondering actually you thought that you couldn't heal. Okay, this is called analog sculpting. I've just given you a small inkling into the insight of communication on another level and having mastery on this level of the other than conscious. Whenever you sit with a medicine person, you'll be immediately aware that she or he has a very amazing sophistication on this level. The big difference between a psychotherapist, Western trained cognitive rational therapist, someone trained academically, is that often may have little insight in this level. But the medicine person, she or he has been schooled on this level which we're talking about now. This is called analog sculpting, and it is literally about sculpting the analog to access state-specific behaviour. One more thing I just will share with you. You know something, I never have fixed seating. And then lots of people, they would go, oh, well, we have to have fixed seating here. So-and-so's going to sit there and so-and-so's going to sit here and blah, 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 blah. Well, if you'd like for that, that's okay. But how about the idea that people will just sit wherever they like? And I said, well, gee, what about that? I said, possible to discover what this person's strategy is in the moment by where they sit. And I said, oh, really? I said, absolutely. People who sit on this side, that's a strategy for their learning versus people who sit on this side. People who come early and sit up the front versus people who come late and sit down the back. All of this is all analog and describes the very things that's going on. Why would you want to less than allow for this sort kind of a thing to be so that it's enriched? The big unique quality with this work, and I know we're finished, versus any other kind of work, is we're very allowing. We allow behaviour to be, so this becomes the grist, this becomes the material that people employ and use to chip away at this false reflected centre till it's completely empty. In other traditions, people say, oh, you're going to be in a sheltered workshop, you're going to put on a robe, and we're going to put all of this away from you so you'll never have to deal with it. It's like, that's for babies. That's for people who want to live in sheltered workshops. And it does not work. Most all of those people are the most immature people you'll ever come across. And they bow and scrape, and I want you to know it's an absolute egotistical act. And I want you to know and look at it as this. It's not what you think it is. All the bowing and scraping and all that kind of stuff, it honestly, to God, it just is empty nothingness. And it's often a form of egotistical kind of stuff. Be empty. Have developed a strategy for completely having emptied yourself and have no story whatsoever. And come from emptiness. And just simply use the things that's put in front. And make use of these things. And have a bag of tools that you can use, but not have any set way. Have no predictable routine. And do not have any set way of doing things. You know, change things around. Be skillful at applying the things in the moment. I hope this lesson on analog sculpting has been useful to you. This is our 24th lesson that we've had with each other. Each lesson has compounded and built on things. And I just would say that's so very important, the way you sit with each other, the persons that come to you, just have an immediate feeling of rapport. If you're connecting with the person over the phone, to have immediate feeling of rapport by adjusting your voice tone and the analog to match and pace the persons that you're with. I hope you're having a wonderful day as you're viewing this. I hope that we've really given you some great information about analog sculpting. Lots of love and kisses, and I look forward to catching up with you at lesson number 25.